Hello, everyone, and I hope you're all well. My name is Tanner Dajne, and I'm the host of Self-Sabotage Solutions. On this podcast, it's my opportunity and my pleasure to be able to share everything I know about self-sabotage, but also to be able to share other people's self-sabotage stories. Because it's so important that we know that no matter who we are, where we come from, or what we've experienced in life, that we're all able to overcome self-sabotage. And so today, I'm very excited and very grateful because we have integrative health practitioner and self-sabotage coach Ted Hanik on the line. And I've seen his journey and where he's come from, looking at his pictures from like where he used to be and where he is now. It's just such an amazing transformative journey he's gone on, and to see where he is now and like how he's helped so many people, it's really inspiring. So thank you so much for coming on the podcast today, Ted. Can you just please introduce yourself a little bit and then we can go into your story?
Sure. Yeah. Thanks for having me, Tanner. And let me just say at the onset that it's a pleasure and honor to be on your podcast. And I love what you're up to. And obviously, you're a young guy. I mean, I'm almost 50 years old. So to be at this level of awareness,
Mhm.
to be this active, and to be aware and helping people at your level at 29 years old, I think it's amazing, a phenomenal thing you're doing. So yeah, let me just introduce myself really briefly. Ted Hanik. I have my own self-sabotage story. I was very focused on working in the animation industry in my early career, and that has a whole intricate story in and of itself. But um, I ended up working on The Simpsons for a while. I was a character animator on The Simpsons for a couple of years. Got an Emmy Award while I was there, and moved into teaching. I was a professor at the college level. I taught figure drawing and artistic anatomy for a while, and then I moved more into the private sector. Worked at IBM for a lot of years doing motion graphics and video production. And really, the long and short of it is that I just wasn't that fulfilled in any of these things that I'm
Right.
describing. And when I was in my mid 20s or so, I really found myself where I was really unhealthy, and I
Mhm.
really got depressed. And that was really a big theme throughout my entire life up until probably half a dozen years ago or so. I just always felt like behind you, you have a saying, it says I'm enough, right? So I always felt like I wasn't enough, no matter if I was animating on The Simpsons or whatever it is I was doing. It just, there was always this dialogue in my head of it's never quite enough, it's not correct, it's always off the mark. And really, my story, my transformation was that I got my health back. Like I mentioned, I was at a point where I was like 60, 70 pounds overweight, and I'm not a very tall guy. I'm about 5'6", and I was over 200 pounds. So I really found myself where I was just in a place where I just wasn't happy with who I was, and the direction I was going. And I just, for whatever reason, I looked around and I just said, like, I don't want to do what everybody else does. I don't want to go down that road of driving through and eating Carl's Jr. That was my food of choice. Drinking a lot of Coca-Cola and stuff like that, and getting drunk every weekend. So I started to like cut back, and I started to lose weight and get my health back, and I started, evolving. And that was really my first step, was really getting my health back. And that's been a really long journey. Like you mentioned, I'm an integrative health practitioner. So in the last 4 or 5 years, I got really focused on health and wellness. And I really like my story, and this is really where I speak from. I know you're very into self-sabotage and subconscious mind, as well as am I. But I really worked on initially just getting healthy. Like, how do I optimize? Like, how do I effectively sleep better? I was really into Dave Asprey and a little of these like biohacking things. And how do we start to like effectively eat? How do we effectively breathe? How do we start to bring some more energy into the body? How do we really relax our autonomic nervous system? How do we exercise effectively and not over exercise? And then I started to get myself in this place where I just felt a lot better, removed a lot of the stress from my life. And that feeling, that frenetic feeling that I had about I wasn't enough, and I used to live in constant stress. And so when I brought my overall toxicity down by just cleaning up my act and just losing weight, all of a sudden my consciousness started to elevate. I started to feel like I wasn't so stressed all the time. And that was a really interesting offshoot for me, because it was something I wasn't expecting. And then I started to investigate, like, well, what is it about mindset? What is it about connection to faith, connection to God? What is it about how do I optimize in my present state of mind? How do I release a lot of these stories, because that's what they are, they're just stories. And I started to understand that all this overwhelm and anxiety and these negative feelings were something that I was perpetuating. I was existing in this feeling of no matter what I did, it was never going to quite measure up, and that comes from my subconscious programming. And so I've had to really release that story and accept and really embrace our own innate intelligence, first of all, and our own power. And so it's like all of it comes together, and all of a sudden I started to understand in the last few years, and that's what's been so incredible. I know the last couple of years have been like insane, right, for a lot of people, and obviously it has for me too. But at the same time, it's really shown me like how much power we really do have, and how when you start to resonate at a different frequency, you attract to your reality different people, different situations. And so for me, I preach it from the mountaintops that like getting your health back is step number one. Get your health back. So focus on your health, and then your mindset is a close second, really releasing all these subconscious programs and starting to realize that we live in a culture, as you well know, that really has no interest in you living your best life.
Mhm.
And we've absorbed a lot of these negative patterns and these negative, these negative messages. And if we're not careful, if we allow that to permeate our entire existence, that's what we'll become. That's the message we will start to believe about ourselves, and that's what you will attract to your reality. And so to wrap it all up, it's I've accomplished a few different things in my life professionally, but it's always been this feeling of, well, when's the other shoe gonna drop? And it's only been in the last, like I said, half dozen years or so where I really acknowledged, who I am, what I've done, the impact I have, and really allowing that to speak from a different place and to now come from my heart. And I can share a little bit about where I'm at now and what I'm doing now. But it's been quite a journey, and it's ongoing. Like a lot of people think maybe if you're listening to this that like I've transcended all these things, and in some ways I have, but it's still that pattern, that groove. And so it's a constant letting go process. It's a constant focusing on my breathing pattern, focusing on, this addiction, and realizing that we all have an addiction to a set of feelings, and breathing through it, releasing it, letting it go, and then staying in the present moment. I think we get like shiny object syndrome. We're thinking about what's happening next week or tomorrow, a future that doesn't exist, and being here, being present, being in your body and being in your life, and enjoying and embracing the beauty that is our lives is a gift to be here.
So yeah, I love that. And I really love your story. So why do you think that, people are, naturally drawn to, that shiny light or that, shiny object? Like why are they drawn to like that instant, satisfaction, that quick fix? Why do you think that is? Do you think it's because society is set up that way or
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a little bit of a couple different things going on. It's obvious our society is we're all hyperdrive with our attention span. So, I mean, look at any broadcast television. I mean, I worked in broadcast television, and I used to, make commercials basically, and everything is like the cuts are very rapid. It's all very rapid. The pace of everything is very rapid. And I think we've all been conditioned. If you look at like TikTok, look at social media, it's like I'm scrolling, I'm on to the next thing. It's like entertain me right now. I have to be entertained. And it's like we're all looking at all these devices, and I make a conscious effort to look away and spend time in nature, spend time with my family, and just shut these things off. So I think that's part of it. And then you also have another facet of it that most people just don't have their health. So if you're drinking coffee, or you're finishing off the night with a bottle of liquor, beer, wine, whatnot, you're driving through, you're getting Chick-fil-A, and you're eating all these trans fats and all these inflammatory foods. And so you're in this stress response already. Your body is in fight or flight based upon you're being poisoned by what you're putting in your mouth and what you're ingesting. And so you have a society and a culture that is assaulted on all fronts. Assaulted on all fronts. I mean, you drive down the street. This is what's wild. I'm on the road right now, and you drive through any main street USA, and it's Wendy's, it's McDonald's, it's Chick-fil-A, it's Subway sandwich, it's all these things. It's the same stuff. Everybody's talking about a virus. I'm like, that's the virus. The fact that you got to really search for some nutritious food. And you have a society that's really actively poisoned, bringing their vibrational energy down just by what they're eating and drinking. And then they're absorbing all this negativity, hyperdrive stimulation television programming, and so we just become like highly distracted, highly programmable, and we're really disconnected from our soul consciousness. Everybody's living in ego, that egoic mind, very very much wanting to be right. That's where all the suffering comes from, is from the ego. And so it takes a concerted effort in our society to really release that egoic mind, release that story. And that's the ego. The ego says it's not enough. The ego says, this is right, this is wrong, you're correct, I'm wrong. And it wants to justify and validate, weigh and measure. And so, we have a society living completely in egoic existence. It's living hyperdrive and overly toxic. And so the challenge of the times is to really deprogram, unplug, stop endorsing, and stop actively poisoning yourself, and really focus on how can you control your environment and really take back your power. And I have a lot of hope. I see a lot of people waking up daily, saying, hey, this doesn't work for me. Booster shot number 5, or wherever, whatever number we're on, maybe people start scratching their heads and going, maybe this is all a rigged game. Maybe it's time that it's not just coming at me from the tip of a needle, but it's also that, Mountain Dew I'm buying and drinking down like it's water. And then people are surprised when they have some presentation of disease, and they go off to the allopathic system to give them a pill for every ill. And the whole system is wrapped around this idea that you can just live in this infinitesimally small, playing small, living like a child, and somebody else will pick up the pieces of your damaged life. And I think we're in the death rattle of that system, and people are really going to be forced to slow down. And I think that's what has happened for a lot of people in the last couple of years, is they've been forced to slow down a bit and go, hey, you know what, that job I've been sitting out for 20 years that I actually hate, maybe it's time I make a change, because I can't just be distracted by being able to go off and buy a Sea-Doo because I can afford it. Because who cares? Who cares? I mean, it's nice to be able to acquire things, but the substance and the stuff of life is the experience, and not leaving the music inside. And I think it's really unfortunate. That's obviously your calling and my calling as well, is to help people to realize this is your life. You got one shot at it. So don't spend time in things that you dread or you don't like or you're not happy doing. You got to go for it. You got to go for it. And that comes from bringing it back to your inquiry, is really not being such a goldfish in life, distracted by everything that shines and that pulls you in that direction, and really being able to calm down and focus on, what is your soul telling you, and what is it that is in your heart. And I found it's really beautiful when you start to really listen to that, your instinct, that is there for a reason. You can call it source, you can call it God, whatever it is. But if you get your mind and your health correct, and you get quiet, you'd be amazed at what is being thrust in your direction, what you're being called to. And I think that's really the place that we deserve to go to.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, your gut instinct. I think a lot of people ignore that feeling, and then when they actually are able to use that feeling, it's like they realize just how powerful it is, and how much like insight I think there is, because like I think on some level we're all connected, and I think the universe is always conspiring in our favor. And so like what you like what you've talked about, how your thoughts kind of like create your reality in a way. So like if you are thinking negatively and doing that sort of thing, the universe is going to conspire in your favor to make it so it's a negative reality. And so you got to change, not just your thoughts, but your overall process, your holistic view of everything, your health, your thinking, what you're watching, everything, right? Because it all affects us. Now, one thing you were talking about when I was listening was coffee, and I know that you do like your own coffee program, and I know, especially like in like the corporate world, just like how much coffee is like idolized, and like people are like, I can't wake up without my coffee. I'm not myself without my coffee. Like you always hear that, like even like in the job I'm in, like a call center, people are just like, oh, I haven't had my coffee today. I'm not myself, or I can't do my job. So I think a lot of people like don't believe that coffee is actually bad. So I would love to hear, your experience with coffee and just kind of, why you think that we should be removing it from our life.
Yeah, that's a great question, and I've seen the exact same thing. I've worked in lots of corporate jobs, and actually, when I first started on The Simpsons, that was my first time in an office environment, and everybody there was big coffee drinkers. They used to brew it in the kitchen, as like they do in most corporate environments. And the guy I shared a cubicle with, he was like, 3 full cups a day. And I'd ask him back then. I go, "Hey, do you like the coffee?" Because I never had a taste for it. And he's like, "No, not really, but it helps me to get the job done." And I was like, "That's so strange to me. Like, why would you drink something that you don't even enjoy? When it's like that's the sheer definition of a drug, right? You don't enjoy it, but it's like it's enhancing something." So my curiosity was piqued, and I started drinking it on The Simpsons. And at the time, it just became the fabric of the working environment. And I started taking it further and further as like, I started getting more and more addicted to it. Became a part of my life. I moved to Boston after Los Angeles, and I was a professor, like I mentioned. So Boston's a big coffee city. So I got really into the coffee and started to experience different things with it. And then I lived in Portland for a while. So I mean, as you can tell, like when I get into something,
Mhm.
I go all the way. So when I was in Portland, I was taking coffee classes. I was learning about how to properly roast the beans. I was learning about proper grind and steeping times and temperatures and espresso technique. I got like really into coffee. I was really into it. And then about 6 years ago, something like that. Yeah, it was about 6 years ago, and my wife was pregnant, and my health started to like be impacted. I had some things that were going on with me. I had my first hemorrhoid, if I'm going to be blunt. And I was a big CrossFit athlete. I was in the gym. My powerlifting numbers are over 1,000. So my bench, my deadlift, my back squat, I would, running Murph and different workouts. I was like hardcore in the gym. And I figured, hey, if I can lift a bunch of weights and I can run a Murph workout and I can do all this stuff, I'm healthy. Well, meanwhile, I was drinking straight tap water and not filtering it, and I was drinking copious amounts of coffee. So on one hand, I'm like thinking I'm healthy, but I have no actual clue about holistic view of health and wellness. And so I started to learn during that time about, proper hydration, cleaning up your water, energizing your water, and the detrimental impacts that caffeine was having on my biology. So I started to when I learned these things, I learned that it's probably best to taper off of coffee because your blood vessels get constricted in your brain. So when you stop drinking it, they expand because now you're getting more hydration, more blood flow into your body. And it's best to taper off. But like I said, I'm a man of extreme. So I went just like that. I'm like, I'm done with coffee overnight because I just had to know like what it was going to do for me. And I had crippling headache. I couldn't get off the ground for about a day. I felt awful. And I was like, man, at that time I was basically drinking before I quit, drinking very little water. I would make a huge cup of coffee in the morning. I'd usually make an Americano or something like that, or espresso shot in the afternoon. And I was just coffee, coffee, coffee. And then I removed it because I was like, this isn't working for me. And I got rid of it about 6 years ago, and I haven't looked back since. And then I started to research, like get deeper and deeper. And obviously, we both know Jason Christoph. So I started coming across some of his content. I read the book Caffeine Blues. And I just, from my own testimony, right? Like I was about as into coffee as you could possibly imagine. And I just gave it up. I just walked away from it. And I can tell you emphatically, that's why I'm so passionate about it. I got my energy back. I got my sleep back. I got a heck of a lot more of my like positive outlook on life back because I didn't realize that coffee was jacking my stress response. So I'm already somebody who's pretty high energy and tend towards anxiety, stress, and overwhelm as a natural way of being. And then adding on tons of caffeine was like throwing gasoline on a fire. And so when I removed it from my life and I haven't looked back, I mean, it's like I got my life back. And then I started learning about proper hydration, replacing that coffee, that dehydrating toxic coffee, because the caffeine is actually an alkaloid poison that the plant creates. It makes it as a natural pesticide to detract other pests from eating it, and as a way to knock out the competition of where it's growing in the foliage. Well, what we do as humans, we should know better, is that we roast it, which creates its own problems. You can have all kinds of things going on with roasted coffee, and then on top of that, the mold issues, the mycotoxins that's in a lot of coffee. And then we roast it. We put it through water, so you're putting it through, like I was at the time, through tap water. And if you looked at your tap water, look at what's in your tap water. You go to ewg.org, go to the tap water database, put in your zip code, and check out what's in your water. So if you have any interest in being healthy whatsoever, that's like in my book, like, where else would you spend your money but on your water? Properly filter your water and then add an energetic charge to it. So I took out caffeine, which is dehydrating, has all kinds of toxicity, replaced it with filtered, electrolyzed, reduced water. It's like energy through the roof. Energy through the roof, because the body operates with a negative charge, negative ion charge, which we're all starved for. We're not earthing and grounding. We're not connected to nature. We're not walking on the beach barefoot, and we're not breathing a lot of fresh air, right? We're having a lot of like air conditioning coming at you, very positively charged. All these EMFs, everybody's bombarded in these oxidizing, positively charged ions. And so you drink a strong, negatively charged ion-rich water, it'll recharge your battery, give you maximum energy. I mean, I'm 49 years old, and I feel like I have like such an unfair advantage. It's like coffee. Coffee feels like so like 10 years ago. It's like, come on, you're still drinking coffee? There's such a better way. There's such a better way. It's like natural energy is so much better. Like once you know, it's like once you see the man behind the curtain and you realize coffee must be an agenda. Coffee must be an agenda to take us all down. It's really to keep us our vibrational frequency low, to keep you sick and ill, to keep you really stuck in the system, right? You drink coffee and you feel like, hey, that job I don't even really like. Well, when I drink coffee, I feel pretty groovy about it. It feels okay. Well, if you cut it out for a month or 2 months, try sitting at your job. You'll be like, I can't stand it here. I'm bored out of my mind. That's because you're not high. So, for me, it's really interesting to see when you start to remove these things and what you begin to manifest in a different direction. And there's just no going back. It's like things, the way I look at it now is like things have a certain frequency and energy, right? Like this dynamic, our conversation has a frequency and an energy. And I just don't energetically vibe with caffeine anymore. It doesn't match my frequency. So one of the things I've also learned in my health and wellness journey is like to really be attuned to how you feel. I think a lot of us are just so disconnected. Maybe we don't have our health, or we're just not in tune. You don't think about it, right? You eat something and like you have a stomach ache. So instead of just like ignoring it and popping a pill, going like, why do you have a stomach ache? That's a pretty good clue that something's wrong. Or if you eat something and all of a sudden your energy plummets and you feel like I have to go lay down, I got to go sleep. Well, why? If you ate something, it shouldn't knock you out like that. If you have a cup of coffee and all of a sudden you're just like, I'm so jacked, I'm ready to like run around the building 10 times. Well, you should at least be in tune with like that's happening to you right now. And then you can start to understand that this is maybe something that you don't want to actively choose. And that's how I look at coffee is once people have an understanding of what it's actually doing to you, then you have the freedom to make a choice. Do you actually want that in your life? Is that the sort of existence that you want in your life, where you're in traffic and you're just like, oh my God, and that sort of energy is what coffee brings into your life. It's going to help you to manifest more of that. So if that's what you're after, I mean, that's not what I advocate for, but at least you're actively choosing it.
Yeah, I love that because I think it goes back to like what we were talking about before, how like the universe is always conspiring for you. So if you're choosing something, you're gonna get more of that in your life. So I think it's really important that like a big part of overcoming self-sabotage is just getting informed and knowing kind of like what you're doing to yourself or what your actions are, like where they're leading you to. But then I think a lot of people like know like fast food's wrong. I know that, on some level, like, drinking alcohol all the time and drinking coffee all the time and that they're low energy, like that's wrong as well. But and they even maybe even like tell themselves or like a New Year's resolution, right? They want to change those things. But then they like months later, or maybe even like a couple of days later, they're back to doing that exact same thing, and they feel like they're a liar, like there's something wrong with them, like they're just lazy or like they have no willpower. So, in your opinion, why do you think that happens?
That's an excellent question. Yeah, I mean, it's really it's a couple of things going on. People end up getting into a force counter force relationship with their goals, which is never going to work. So that distinction of power versus force. So, being in a place of power, being in commitment, has a different energy than I'm white knuckling this, and this is the time. I'm getting ready to get ready. I'm gonna, on the first of the month, I'm gonna go on my diet, and then I'm gonna, torture myself with whatever it is that I'm doing. And I think it's really important that people understand that that has no real sticking power. There's a lot of suffering in that way of thinking. So being more in a place of power, being in commitment, being an inspiration. And so surrounding yourself with the images and messages that really support where you're aiming. So if it's about getting in better shape, like look at me, I'm nearly 50 years old. So I could look at somebody who's about in their 50s and this is what I've done is like, as you get older and I have two kids, I got a wife, and you could just as easily think like, well, I'm a dad now, I'm going to have my dad bod. I'm nearly 50. I should just play golf and drink beer. And, the days of bench pressing and deadlifting and all that, those are behind me. And these are all, narratives, right? Stories that you could play in your head. Well, we have to change that tape. We have to have a pattern interrupt because there are people. Look at Paul Check. I mean, Paul Check is, what is he? He's in his 60s, I would assume, and the guy is in phenomenal shape. Look at a guy like Jack LaLanne. Jack LaLanne was very into juicing and blending and fitness, and that guy lived that lifestyle his entire life. And he had great flexibility, great overall strength, and he retained his physique. And so it's really important to look at the things that inspire you, stay in that narrative, and really, reprogram the subconscious mind. That's a really big part of it. Like I think there's nothing wrong. Like I think a lot of people they want to go into that place of like beating themselves up, like, oh my gosh, like I can't lose the weight and I can't. And it's like you have to release that story and stop torturing yourself. Like remember, that's the egoic mind. It wants to weigh and measure and tell you you're wrong. You have to release that part of your consciousness or your being and really separate it, move more into consciousness and realize that you're powerful, you're enough, and that it's about staying in that narrative and reprogramming the subconscious mind from a standpoint of not like allowing yourself to embody all these negative messages that bombard us from mass media, popular culture. I mean, I was in the store the other day just getting some things like while we were shopping, and you walk out the checkout line and they have the magazines or whatever. And I wanted to post this on social media because I couldn't believe it. And it had a picture of a slice of like chocolate cake, and it was for people that are type 2 diabetic. It was like diabetes, like you can still indulge, you can still have your chocolate cake. And I'm like, you got to be kidding me. You got to be kidding. It's like unbelievable the way that people are just bombarded with these messages. It's like somebody who has type 2 diabetes, which is an acquired condition. I mean, you could turn that around in 60 or 90 days by lifestyle and diet modifications. And it's really about, it's you have to disconnect from like I was saying, like you drive down the street, it's Wendy's, it's Chick-fil-A, it's all in your face. And so you got to do everything you can to surround your environment and your subconscious downloads into a place of where it's all about supporting you living in your best life, the mindset that you wish to be in, the abundance you wish to be in. Like embody it now, take it on as if it's now. And that's really like the subconscious mind can't tell the difference. So that if you can embed in the subconscious mind, this is happening to me right now, this is my existence right now, this is how it feels to be 60 pounds lighter, this is how it feels to be abundant in my life and in my wealth. And then you will just take natural action in alignment with that chosen goal. And it's such a better experience of transformation because it's like that, it's immediate. And I look at it like going to the gym because we can have this experience through this conversation or in a coaching session with a client. And what I create is like a window. It's like, here's a window. Here's the possibility that is your life that you could manifest 100% for sure. But it's up to you to take those elements and to keep that plate spinning, because it's a new groove. You may have a groove that's telling you, no, that's not, that's, you may have 30, 40 years of a groove. So we have to really work to reprogram and create a new groove and focus, like I said, on your health. Your health is number one. So, it's a battle, or, it's a dynamic between the two. So I hope that answered your question.
No, it definitely did. Yeah. And totally agree with it. We totally have that groove where like that record that we just keep playing over and over that, our subconscious mind has created those programs from what we've learned through life and what we've seen through life, as a safe thing. But something that I thought about, and I know we've kind of actually touched upon a lot of different times throughout our talk here, is how when a lot of people, like when they get older, they kind of just tell themselves, oh, I'm old, so like I have the dad bod now, right? Or like a lot of people my age, or even like younger than me, like I heard like a 19-year-old the other day, it's like, oh, my body's hurting, I'm getting old. It's like, you're 19 years old. Like, why are you telling yourself this, right? Like the things that we tell ourselves and that we're normalizing within society. And like I think a lot of social media is making this worse with like all the memes where like people like share these memes that are saying like, oh, I'm getting old now. We have like the back pains, and just like there's so many different like memes that are like degrading to ourselves, and people think it's like just a joke, but then like they're actually sharing it and like laughing at it, and like they don't understand like how impactful that is on you, and how like we will literally like make that like a blueprint for our life. So I love the fact that you were able to overcome that, and you were able to, at your age, like you don't even look like you're 50 years old. You look very healthy, like probably like low 40s or something like that. And you look amazing. Like you look like the other guys, like Paul Check, and you look like I remember seeing your picture online from like where you were before and where you are now. It's like it's amazing like where you've come from. So
Oh, thanks.
yeah, of course, like so everyone out there, like if you are like in a spot where you don't feel like you're healthy enough, or you're not good enough, you can, like just like Ted did, and just like all the other people we have had on my podcast, that we're all able to overcome that. So Ted, I really appreciate you coming on. If you had one thing you could share with other people, like one word of advice, what would you give to them or share with them?
Gosh, one thing. I mean, I think it's really important to focus on your joy, focus on your bliss. Um, that's still one thing. And I think just being in your center, being truthful. Um, I'm trying to stay on the singular theme here.
Well,
I think
it's
it's
just,
important.
you can do encompassing thing like one, you know, main idea, or, like just something you want to share with people, like just to finish it off.
Yeah, I mean, I think
Appreciate
it's
it.
important to focus on, like I said, being in your consciousness, being in your higher self, really giving thanks and grace to God. Focus on your health. Focus on, how beautiful this life is. None of us are guaranteed anything in this life, and you're a lottery winner just to be here. If you look at the odds of just you being born, you're a gift. Your being here is a gift. Don't squander it. And I think if anything of the last couple of years has really shown myself is that the time's a wasting, right? Like don't put off your dreams. And I really feel that this is a very interesting time for us all to be here, to be experiencing this phase of history. And I really feel very strongly that we're all very powerful beings of light. And I think that it's really important that we all come together during these times and remember how powerful we are, and to not give so much power to the agendas that they're attempting to roll out right now. So I give a lot of my life to God, and that's only a recent thing in my life where I realized that I don't do this alone. None of us do this alone. And focusing on being in our best selves and focus on being as healthy as we all can. I know that in my own health journey, being healthy is not complicated, but there are so many things that you have to navigate and commit to retain your health that it can feel daunting. And the more that you learn about how things work in this realm, the more you become really steadfast and really steely in that resolve about having your health, because that's really what they want from you. And so I think it's really important to work really hard to stay in that place, stay in the power place, and not be enforced. And I know it's challenging, especially if you're watching a lot of TV and taking in a lot of the narrative. I mean, that's a fine line because I want to know what's going on, but I don't want to be in a forced relationship with it either. I want to be able to breathe and release and still live my life and enjoy my life. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know if I answered your question, but I think it's really important to, really give ourselves a place of healing. And, a big part of health, which is only something I've learned about really fully in like the last couple of years, honestly, is that your thoughts will affect everything about your life, everything. And so I came from a place of getting my human vessel, like this machinery, healthy, and then I realized that my mind was actually that missing piece. And that's the great unknown, right? It's really tapping into consciousness and releasing a lot of the stress that we all live under. It's really unfortunate that we live in very stressful times. Like we're not well adjusted to constant texting and, social media and 24/7 news cycles and talk of war and a president that can barely form a sentence. And it's just like, oh my gosh, And so we really have to give ourselves some distance from it, get outside, connect with loved ones, and do everything you can to just, hang around good people like you, and to be engaged in a conversation like this. It keeps that torch carried on from person to person because we all are connected. So I can't thank you enough, man, for having me on. And I just am so inspired by what you're doing. And I just love it, man. Get the message out there and let's help a lot of people.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. And if people want to work with you or find you, find more of like what you're doing, where can they find you? I'll put your links down below as well, but just so they can kind of hear if they're on the podcast and they.
Yeah, yeah. I'm on social media. I'm just Ted Hanik on Facebook. I'm not as active on there, but I'm posting. I'm on the road right now, so I'm traveling with my family in a pop-up trailer for the next 2 months or so. We're doing a cross-country tour, so you can. I'm doing my best to chronicle it and throw it into my stories on both Instagram and Facebook. And I'm finding my rhythm out here, so that includes my social media posting. I'm also on TikTok, so you can find me at Ted Hanik on TikTok, and you can go to my website. It's just hanikhealth.com, and I have a free smoothie guide on there. I actually made my coffee course is free. I used to charge for these things. I'm like, you know what? I just want people to have access to it. And if you want to work with me, you want to coach, you want to connect, you can do that. But I have my coffee course for free. It's called coffeenomore.com. You can go on that website. You can basically register, and it's a free course. I have my Mind Body Summit that I ran last year. That's like over 5 hours of mindset, subconscious mind, and health and wellness information. Tons of links, tons of giveaways. That was also something that I charged for, and I just decided, you know what, I'm gonna make it free for right now. I may change my mind about that,
Mhm.
but it literally has like the download of all the important people, the important books, all the stuff that I learned over the last like 12 years, all the important things that I've done, like the Landmark Forum, for example. I did the entire curriculum for living in 2001. That had a massive impact on the trajectory of my life. So that's in there. I talked to Dr. Will Trebing, who wrote the book Goodbye Germ Theory. He's a good friend of mine. He's been on this quest to get the news out about the falsity of the germ theory of disease. He's on there. I got Robert Wright, who wrote the book Killing Cancer, Not People, and interviewed him for a little while. So it's great stuff. So yeah, reach out. I don't mean to be a plug for my own stuff,
Okay.
but I definitely want people to partake in it.
Mhm.
And yeah, man, thanks again. I'm sorry now I'm in the dark here,
Yeah.
but I'm in my car. But thanks again for having me.
Yeah, no, my pleasure, and thank you so much for making time. I know you were busy, on the road, but I think your message is just as powerful, if you're in the car and it's starting to get dark. So thank you so much. So everyone, go find look at the description down below. I'll have all his links, and learn as much as you can. This the time. Like he said, that it's a lot of his content's free, and you can learn so much from this a super intelligent man and this expert in so many subjects. So please, check him out and thank you for coming to the podcast. And remember, we can always, all of us can always overcome self sabotage. So don't let yourself believe that you are stuck, that there's something wrong with you, and don't be afraid of asking for help. That's if you're sitting there, struggling or in misery and like hating your life, it's not an embarrassing thing. It's not something to be looked down upon to ask for help. So many people who I know who are in like the best spots of their life, like Ted, like they went out and they sought out mentors, and they reached out to other people, and they learned from them as much as they could, so that they didn't have to make the same mistakes that a lot of people went through, or like their mentors went through, so they could accelerate their learning and get to the point where they want to in life. So ask for help, learn as much as possible, especially in today's day and age where we have the internet, and it's so easy to go out and just watch a YouTube video and learn this, or watch a podcast and be able to hear someone else's story. So hope you all have a great night, and thank you, Ted, so much for coming on. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.